feed from the quad. So you're supposed to get it on 5 or 6. You hearing me? You hearing through the mic or through the headset? Alright, one two one two. One two one two one one. Them off, right?
The 35th regular meeting of the Conference of Heads of Government of the Caribbean Community, Caricom. And we have a packed room here this afternoon.
Very much so.
Almost everyone is seated. Will begin in just a few minutes, very short minutes.
Once again, we want to say a very special good afternoon and welcome to ABS Radio, Television, and GIS, wherever you are on the Super Information Highway. We're glad that you can join us this afternoon as we bring you the 35th, of course, summit of the CARICOM. Of course, we remember Dickinson Bay. It all began on this area, not this hotel. It was the Anchorage Hotel there. The Anchorage Hotel, that's where it was signed, of course, and Dickinson Bay comes alive again today. They started very early yesterday, Monday, but of course the 8th special meeting of the Community Council on the final draft, of course, strategic plan, and that went on later, and of course that was hosted by the Honorable Charles Fernandez, the new Minister of Foreign Affairs here in Antigua and Barbuda.
It's a very short program by CARICOM standards. This evening, we will hear from the outgoing chairman of CARICOM, the Vincentian Prime Minister, the Honorable Dr. Ralph Gonsalves. We will also hear from the incoming chairman of CARICOM, that's Antigua and Barbuda's Prime Minister, the Honorable Gaston Brown. We will also hear this afternoon from His Excellency Erwin Larocque, the Secretary General of CARICOM. So we have a packed room of foreign ministers. The Prime Ministers are not just yet seated. They will walk into the auditorium based on the announcement of their country, but the foreign ministers are seated, and we have some notables. We have the ministers of government in attendance in Antigua and Barbuda. We also have opposition members of parliament also with us this afternoon. We have in the front row the President of the Senate, the Honorable Alicia Williams Grant.
To get on board, especially, of course, the Spanish territories, and that they've been quoted, and of course, their interest in becoming part of CARICOM, so that we can have that connection as far as the southern tier of the Caribbean is concerned with the Spanish territories. But all in all, in the making, the 35th summit that they're having, it is rather important because we're at the threshold here in the Caribbean where the economy is the bigger focus because of what we've been going through over the years. So now that they've started, we know for a fact that many things came up, and today was the 17th meeting of the Council for Finance and Planning as considered the report of the Commission of the Economy, and that was due to take place today. And here's hoping that the outcome of that, we can see all the benefits throughout the entire Caribbean region.
Yes, the ministers, the heads of CARICOM and their ministers will be locked in sessions following the opening ceremony here this evening. And their main focus over the next few days is the strategic plan for CARICOM, 6 integrated strategic priorities for the community over a 5-year period, 2015 to 2019, and key areas of interventions for each. The 6 integrated strategic priorities are building economic resilience, social resilience, environmental resilience, technological resilience, strengthening the CARICOM identity and spirit of community, and strengthening community governance. Two enabling priorities have also been identified. They're coordinated foreign policy and research, development, and innovation.
And one of the things that I remember you asking last night is about transportation in the region.
Yes.
And I can remember earlier when they had the OECS meeting here early on the year when we spoke to the Prime Minister of Grenada. The Prime Minister was saying, listen, we talk about Caribbean tourism. He believes that if the cost of travel in the region is a lot less, we will have more of a Caribbean travel inter-islands. And that's one of the things that they're looking at as far as how can they make travel affordable. And of course, here comes the Commissioner of Police just coming in, and he's going next to,
Yes.
of course, is that is that
Chief of Defense
Chief of Defense Staff? Yeah, I got to be careful.
Colonel Sir Trevor Thomas.
Trevor Thomas. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, he's over there. But
Actually, at a time when it's sheer turbulence for airlines within the region. Just today, we hear that Caribbean Airlines have been cancelling, that's the national flag carrier of Trinidad and Tobago, have been cancelling flights domestic and internationally because there's a sick out by pilots, or pilots reportedly have called in sick.
and it's all about that cost and that salary and that one wants to hear. Again, we're live at the Sandals Grand for the opening ceremony for the 35th. And of course, that is the 35th. If we want to make certain that we have it right here.
Yes,
The
it is.
opening ceremony for the 35th regular meeting of the Conference of Heads of Government of the Caribbean Community, CARICOM. And because throughout the year and throughout the year, they'll have different meetings, but this is where CARICOM will be hosting. But this is one of the meetings where the heads of government in the conference sitting toe-to-toe with each other to make certain that, of course, they're ironing out what we in the Caribbean really need as a region.
During this evening's program also, the 11th CARICOM Triennial Award for Women would be bestowed upon a deserving woman. She is Bahamian. She is Marion Bethel. And so during the course of the program this evening, Marion Bethel will be awarded the 11th CARICOM Triennial Award for Women. And to have such an award, they would have had to play a significant role in the Caribbean.
And also there will be, this closes, even when we know who the winner is with Mitchell Henderson, but we'll actually hear the song, the winner of the CARICOM song. For our region, they had a competition, and of course Mitchell Henderson, a renowned artist from the region, and of course this lady has performed around the world, a great vocalist and an entertainer.
A Dominican by birth.
Yes,
And she represents Dominica very well. Yes, but just going back to Bethel, who will receive the Triennial Award, she is a Bahamian attorney. She's a scholar, a poet, a filmmaker, creative writer, and a strong advocate for gender equality, human rights activist. She's also a wife, and she joins an elite rank of women within CARICOM who have received this award. In the past, we have Nesta Patrick, who received the Triennial Award. She is a national of Trinidad and Tobago. Also, the late Dame Nita Barrow of Barbados. Dr. Peggy Antrobus, a national of Grenada and a citizen of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Also receiving this award a few years ago was Magda Pollard, a national of Guyana. Dr. Lucille Mayer of Jamaica, Professor Joycelyn Messiah, a national of Guyana and a citizen of Barbados, Professor Rhoda Redad and Tobago. Also receiving this award, this Triennial Award, is Justice Desiree Bernard. We know she sat on the Caribbean Court of Justice and she retired just a few years ago. So Justice Bernard would have received this triennial award for her work in the judiciary, the legal services in the Caribbean. Also, Professor Violet Udine Bartu, a national of Barbados. So Bethel is joining an elite group of people. In the past,
We welcome Secretary General of Caricom, Ambassador Irwin
we have
LaRock.
Nesta Patrick, who received Trinidad and Tobago. Also, the late Dame Nita Barrow of Barbados, Dr. Peggy Antrobus, a national of Grenada and a citizen of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Also receiving this award a few years ago was Magda Pollard, national of Guyana, Dr. Lucille Mayer of Jamaica, Professor Joycelyn Messiah, a national of Guyana and a citizen of Barbados, Professor Rhoda Redda and Tobago. Also receiving this award, this triennial award, is Justice Desiree Bernard. We know she sat on the Caribbean Court of Justice and she retired just a few years ago. So Justice Bernard would have received this triennial award for her work in the judiciary, the legal services in the Caribbean. Also, Professor Violet Udine Bartu, a national of Barbados. So Bethel is joining an elite group of people.
We welcome Secretary General of Caricom, Ambassador Irwin LaRock.
Well, here we are, of course, we're awaiting the arrival, of course, of the heads for the 35th regular meeting of the Conference of Heads of Government. And I mean,
the suspicions of our people by delivering to them real and tangible benefits. The road is long. It is not for the weary, nor is it for those lacking in stamina. To silence the doubters, to allay the fears, to lay down the solid foundations on which to build a Caribbean nation, I am personally resolved to walk that road. The 35th meeting of the Conference of Heads of State and Government of the Caribbean Community, Caricom, is our opportunity to resolve to walk that road. We walk it together. Ladies and gentlemen, once again, welcome to Antigua and Barbuda. In the words of our outgoing chairman, Dr. Ralph Gonzalez, the Caribbean and its people are of a special type. We share European languages, spoken and written, with distinctive Caribbean nuances, flares, and usages. Metaphorically, we are the songs of the Caribs, the Arawaks, and the Amerindians. We are the rhythm of Africa, the melody of Europe, the chords of Asia, and the homegrown lyrics of the Caribbean itself. Not only are our people unique, but so too is our culture. It is therefore now my pleasure to invite Miss Mauricia Potter to do a performance for us on pan. Missions of our people by delivering to them real and tangible benefits. The road is long. It is not for the weary, nor is it for those lacking in stamina. To silence the doubters, to allay the fears, to lay down the solid foundations on which to build a Caribbean nation, I am personally resolved to walk that road. The 35th meeting of the Conference of Heads of State and Government of the Caribbean Community, Caricom, is our opportunity to resolve to walk that road. We walk it together. Ladies and gentlemen, once again, welcome to Antigua and Barbuda. In the words of our outgoing chairman, Dr. Ralph Gonzalez, the Caribbean and its people are of a special type. We share European languages, spoken and written, with distinctive Caribbean nuances, flares, and usages. Metaphorically, we are the songs of the Caribs, the Arawaks, and the Amerindians. We are the rhythm of Africa, the melody of Europe, the chords of Asia, and the homegrown lyrics of the Caribbean itself. Not only are our people unique, but so too is our culture. It is therefore now my pleasure to invite Miss Mauricia Potter to do a performance for us on time. Thank you very much, Miss Mauricia Potter. Ladies and gentlemen, his task is a heavy one. And since his taking up of the position of Secretary General of Caricom, he has shown the capacity to keep our nations united under the Caricom banner. It is my pleasure to invite to the podium Secretary General of Caricom, Ambassador Erwin Laroque, to deliver brief remarks.
Excellency, Dave Louise Lecter, Secretary General of Antigua and Barbuda, Honorable Pastor Brown, Prime Minister of Antigua and Barbuda, Chairman of the Conference of Heads of Government in the Caribbean Community, Dr. the Honorable Ralph Gonzalez, Prime Minister of the Citizen of the Caribbean, Chairman of the Conference, Your Excellencies, Heads of State, Honorable Ministers, President of the Senate, Speaker of the House, Members of Parliament, Honorable Alderman Spencer, Leader of the Opposition, the Right Honorable Sir Charles Michael Dennis Byron, President of the Caribbean Court of Justice, heads of representatives of regional and international organizations, ambassadors from the Caribbean community, and other members of the distinguished delegates, specially invited guests, representatives of the media, people of the Caribbean community. It is my pleasure to welcome you to the 35th meeting of the Conference of Heads of Government of the Caribbean community. It is also my pleasure to welcome to the post of chairman the Honorable Gaston Brown, our former Prime Minister, who is participating in his first meeting of the conference and starts at the helm. Prime Minister, may I take this opportunity to congratulate you on your recent victory at the polls and express my appreciation for your ready acceptance of the leadership of the community at this critical juncture of our integration process. Our initial exchanges have demonstrated to me quite clearly the personal commitment to the advancement of integration, which is in keeping with the country's prominent historical role in the Over the last 6 months, I have had the benefit and indeed the pleasure of the counsel and guidance of another Prime Minister whose commitment to integration is well known, Dr. Honorable Ralph Gonzalez, Prime Minister of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, also known as the Commonwealth. Comrade Prime Minister, as Chairman, you guided us with wisdom and skill during your term, and I express heartfelt gratitude.
Them real and tangible benefits. The road is long. It is not for the weary, nor is it for those lacking in stamina. To silence the doubters, to allay the fears, to lay down the solid.
I will not preempt the citation, but a variety of skills and
foundations on which to build the Caribbean that I am personally resolved to walk also the that road. The 35th meeting of the Conference of Heads of State and Government of the Caribbean Community, Caricom, is our opportunity to resolve to walk that road.
The supremely talented artist won a competition.
Ladies and gentlemen, once again, welcome to Antigua and
I'm assured
Barbuda.
that the entries
In the words
very
of
high
our
standard,
outgoing chairman,
making the judges
Dr. Ralph
exceedingly
Gonzalez, the
difficult.
Caribbean and its
That
people
song
are of a
represents a
special
symbol
type.
of
We
unity
share European
and
languages,
history
spoken and written, with distinctive Caribbean nuances, flares, and usages. Metaphorically, we are the songs of the Caribs, the Arawaks, and the Amerindians.
Mr. Chairman,
We are the rhythm of
assume your position
Africa,
at the
the
time
melody
our
of
region is
Europe,
looking to
the
consolidate
chords of
and
Asia,
reposition
and
our
the
education
homegrown
system
lyrics
in an
of the
ever-changing
Caribbean
global
itself.
environment.
Not
It's
only
fitting
are our
that this
people
place,
deep, but so too
so
is
rich in
our
the history of our integration,
It is therefore now my
where we
pleasure
gather once
to
again
invite Miss
do what is
Mauricia
required
Potter
for our integration
to a performance for us.
is respond to challenges. To make that transition, we must find collective solutions to the serious challenges, particularly with respect to economic conditions that threaten the hard-won gains of our people. The structural and institutional characteristics which affect growth in those small, vulnerable economies combine to restrict our ability to compete internationally, expose our vulnerabilities to external events, and constrain our capacity adjustment. That vulnerability is demonstrated by the lingering effects of the global and financial crisis, resulting, among other things, in the stubborn global
Thank you very much, Miss Mauricia Potter.
and falling fiscal revenue. It leaves our government
Ladies and gentlemen,
precious little room to maneuver, especially as the international financial institutions and our development partners use the misleading criteria.
his task is a heavy one,
to graduate us
and
out
since
of
his taking up
much
of
needed
the position of Secretary
Importantly,
Caricom,
neither the
he has
economic
shown
and
the
financial
capacity
crises
to keep
or the
our
causes of climate
nations
change, another
united
of our major
under the
challenges,
Caricom banner.
originated with us.
It is my pleasure to invite to
There
the
is
podium
analytical evidence to
Secretary
prove
General
that
of
the impact
Caricom,
on the
Ambassador
economies of
Erwin
post-Caribbean
Larocque,
states
to
has
deliver
heightened
brief
the
remarks.
system challenges. Formidable as these challenges are, our community's history clearly shows that we have never been daunted in the face of trials. It is now, in this period of acute economic stress faced by our region, that the spirit of unity that brings us together in all forms of advancement is infusing our actions as we seek to build the community's resilience to withstand the shocks, whether they be economic, social, or finance. Never before in recent history have so many of our member states faced such challenges at the same time as such a time. It is a recognition of the need to find solutions to the several problems that our heads of government mandated that we prepare a parliament plan which seeks to reposition the community and which will inform the institutional mechanisms Michael to carry James Byron, forward. President having consulted extensively throughout the community over the past year, the first ever community strategic plan has been prepared. That plan, geared towards refocusing, redirecting, and reorganizing the community, is before this meeting and will set our course for the immediate future and beyond. The plan has identified 8 strategic priorities to address the challenges over the 5-year period. Broadly, this will involve building resilience in the economic, social, environmental, and technological areas, as well as strengthening governance and our spirit of community. Coordinating our foreign and external economic relations and ambassador development and innovation are also essential elements of that strategy. Distinguished delegates, the key to the success of the plan is agreement on the priority activities and the steps to carry them. That in itself is my sign that we welcome you to achieving the 5th meeting of the conference required to guide the future of the Caribbean community. We must now harness the channel of resources of your results to our benefit. Those participatory factors delivering those benefits is how we organize ourselves to make it possible. Prime Minister, may I take this opportunity to congratulate. This is a plan for the election commission as a whole, and all of express my appreciation for the ready acceptance and entail a level of leadership cooperation and coordination at this vulnerable member states, juncture, all the institutions of the community, and the Secretariat, our initial operating within a responsive government structure with clear lines of accountability, on direction, another important facet of that governance structure is the coordination partnership with all our stakeholders. Private sector last 6 months, civil society had the benefit and indeed the pleasure to drive the force of information guidance along another prime path. This commitment, this partnership, this forward even understanding of reality of economic and social challenges, partners, we have a common role to play in the success. Former Prime Minister, as chairman, you guided us live with and steer all the and I stress also gratitude.
Them real and tangible benefits. The road is long. It is not for the weary, nor is it for those lacking stamina. To silence the doubters, to allay the fears, to lay down the solid.
I will not preempt the citation, and it's a clear recognition of a variety of skills and foundations
on which to build the Caribbean I am personally resolved to also the the 35th meeting of the Conference of Heads of State and Government of the Caribbean Community Caricom is our opportunity to resolve to walk that road. We walk it together. Ladies and gentlemen, once again, welcome to Antigua and Barbuda. In the words of our outgoing chairman, Dr. Ralph Gonzalez, the Caribbean and its people are of a special type. We share European languages spoken and written with distinctive Caribbean nuances, flares, and pieces, and correlation. We are the songs of the Caribbean, the Arawaks, and the Amerindians. We are the rhythms of Africa, the melody of Europe, the chords of Asia, and the homegrown lyrics of the Caribbean.
The creation of a single ICT space that this is one of the objectives.
But so rich in history, it is therefore now my pleasure to invite Miss Mauricia Potter to impose for us
task with development to make that transition and we must find collective solutions to the serious challenges, particularly part of that work on the match education and systems. What is required, structural and economic characteristics, which will also help to all high economies of human combined to restrict our ability to compete internationally, to expose our vulnerabilities and constrain having part of that vulnerability during some demonstration and having results in more in discovering global.
Thank you very much.
Having part of that vulnerability during some demonstration and having results in more having part of that vulnerability during some demonstration and having results in more
Thank you very much.
That vulnerability during the demonstration.
Theatre of Antigua and Barbuda. Thank you very much, National Dance Theatre. The National Dance Theatre. Ladies and gentlemen, our Caribbean civilization and the contemporary circumstances of our regional. About this, we ought to entertain no doubts. This quest for a deeper union is a cause vital to our progress and cannot be won by doctrine alone. Let us again put the issue of union on the agenda and proceed to it with measured practical steps, which truly mean something to the people of Egypt. For my part, it is a noise in my blood, in my bones. Thank you very much, National Dance. Vain. Together now. Those were the words echoed by our next speaker, exactly 13 years ago in the Bahamas, as the new boy on the block. Today, the echo in his bones for improved functional cooperation and a deepening of economic integration is still very real and present. It is my pleasure to invite to the podium to address you the outgoing chairman of the conference, Dr. the Honorable Ralph Gonsalves, Prime Minister of St. Vincent and the Grenadines.
Your Excellency, the Governor General of Antigua and Barbuda, my friend, the Prime Minister of Antigua and Barbuda, the Honorable Gaston Brown, colleague heads of government and state, the Honorable Leader of the Opposition, my very dear friend too, Baldwin Spencer. I have friends on both sides in Antigua. I want you to believe that. I believe Robin might be with me tomorrow having breakfast at Galley Bay. I want to acknowledge the President of the Senate and the Honorable Speaker of the House of Assembly, the Honorable Chief Justice of the Caribbean Court of Justice, the ministers of government, heads of delegation, leaders of regional integration organizations and other regional bodies, and Your Excellencies, members of the Diplomatic Corps, and ladies and gentlemen and children of our Caribbean civilization. First, congratulations are in order to the people of Antigua and Barbuda and their relevant state institutions for yet again being fully engaged in the democratic exercise of choosing a government through free and fair elections. I congratulate too the Antiguan Labour Party and its leader, the Honorable Gaston Brown, the new Prime Minister, on their electoral triumph. The region expects from Comrade Gaston the continuation of or excelling the sterling leadership which this magnificent country has experienced since independence through the iconic national hero, the Right Excellent Vice Cornwall Bird, the Honorable Lester Bird, and the Honorable Baldwin Spencer. In this moment of his electoral defeat, I salute Baldwin Spencer for his contribution to the regional integration movement. Antigua and Barbuda is blessed with quality leadership in both the government and the opposition. This fact augurs well for the country, the OECS, and Caricom. In our Caribbean, we often take for granted the majesty and sanctity of the people's right to elect governments of their own choosing through free and fair elections. Only the aberration in Grenada in 1979 and the special circumstances from time to time historically in Guyana, Haiti, and Suriname have blotted the impeccable record of free democratic choice in post-colonial times. In every Caribbean country today, governments come, they stay, or they go through the democratic imperative of regular mandated elections. In this regard, though we in the Caribbean, we in Caricom, invite international observers to our elections as a matter of course, we truly do not need lessons from anyone in democracy, especially from those whose elections are prisoners of incumbency and money. To be sure, improvements in our electoral processes are necessary and desirable. And we know what we must do to make better certain of their features. But no holier than thou hectoring by external powers and principalities is required. After all, no democratic government in our region has ever been chosen by a divination of a pregnant Chad or a hanging Chad or by a determination of a Supreme Court. I proclaim with near certainty that among Caricom's principal socio-political exports of quality and quantity are democratic politicians and Christian evangelists. We have a lot of them. Lessons from elsewhere are vital, but I doubt that they are required in the areas of political democracy and Christian theology. Mr. Chairman, the current status of Caricom can be characterized by the twin and dialectically connected processes of consolidation and progress within the terms of Caricom's design, as crafted in the revised Treaty of Chaguaramas of July 2001, and the subsequent decisions of the Conference of Heads and of other treaty institutions. At the outset, it is always important to remind everyone that Caricom is a community of sovereign states, cobbled together by a creative intergovernmentalism and not a supranationalism. In the entire Caricom architecture, only the Caribbean Court of Justice, the CCJ, in its original compulsory and exclusive jurisdiction as the guardian of the revised treaty and the enforcer of community law, is a supranational entity, clothed with the authority to hold governments to account and to compel obedience. Caricom is not a unitary state, not a federation, and not even a confederation. Thus, as a community of sovereign states, it constantly gropes for consensus without a central executive mechanism and a legislative machinery like in the European Union. This is why it is left to the supranational CCJ to correct any implementation deficit within the scope of its jurisdiction, as it has done in the Trinidad cement and Shani Mairi cases. Still, we cannot expect the CCJ to perform miracles and fill the administrative, executive, and policy lacunae evident in the revised treaty. That is the fundamental business of the political directorate in the regional integration enterprise. This is our business. Despite the design limitations of Caricom, its possibilities have borne fruit, even if unevenly, in its four articulated pillars of coordinated activities, namely functional cooperation, economic integration including trade, the coordination of foreign policy, and the combining of regional security initiatives. In each of these areas, much progress has been made over the past 41 years of Caricom's existence, and especially so since the revised treaty some 13 years ago. Still, there's much work to be done. Over the past 6 months of my chairmanship of Caricom, consolidation and advance have been evident on several items of integration, including the following. The free movement of persons, especially since the Mairi judgment in October 2013, and we must thank the CCJ. The continued utilization by the private sector in Caricom of the right of establishment so as to facilitate enhanced regional investment, job and wealth creation. The relatively smooth working of the Free Trade Customs Union, tariff and non-tariff arrangements, and payment system in the single market. The improved coordination of the regional security apparatuses, and between them and other friendly nations which have a vested interest in our region and hemisphere in fighting crime. The continued coordination of foreign policy, despite some hiccups or episodes of dissonance, and the ongoing progress being made on a swath of functional integration subjects, such as health, where Denzel Douglas has done such a magnificent job, education, culture, sports, the elderly, women, the youth, persons with disabilities, and social security. During the past 6 months too, it has been my pleasure to see Barbados chosen as the locale for the global launch of World Environment Day. Pleased to be a witness to the immense national, regional, and international achievements of several Caricom member states in diverse areas, including scientific research, education, tourism, and other productive endeavors, sports and culture, and diplomacy. It has been my pleasure to celebrate quietly, noisily in some cases, the splendid achievements of numerous individual Caricom citizens and firms, and to watch and participate with countless pilgrims at prayer in joyful gratitude and heartfelt thanks to Almighty God for the bountiful blessings He has granted us in our region and for the amazing grace which He offers us always to lead us safely home. For those who say we have nothing to appreciate, that's quite a long list. That's quite a long list. The absence of a dramatic forward movement in Caricom's affairs ought not to invite unwarranted criticism or a paralyzing cynicism. Neither must we fall prey to a smug satisfaction about consolidation and progress in the face of foot dragging on some critical issues and an unacceptable implementation deficit on items upon which we have solemnly agreed. Mr. Chairman, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, deeper integration beyond the single market and functional cooperation among countries which are predominantly resource-challenged islands faces obstacles not encountered by resource-rich nations in an economic union on a continental landmass. Islandness naturally produces an outward gaze enlarged by globalization, but it engenders too an intense inward look which the very external pressures mistakenly magnify among citizens, some citizens, to become an illusory localism or parochialism offered as a strategic option. Islandness. If you think that this only afflicts us, look at what's happening with Britain and the European Union. Islandness is something very peculiar. Further, given the profound resource limitations of most member states of Caricom and the unevenness of their resource endowments and socio-economic development, the challenges attendant upon a deep integration push are exacerbated. An ongoing economic slowdown worsens on the ground the condition for a deeper union. Yet, in very smallness, our islandness, our scarcity of resources, and the global economic downturn which necessitate a greater cooperative integration effort. So despite the challenges and the difficulties, those very things, these limitations, in concert with our extant possibilities as largely middle-income developing countries, ought more assuredly to prompt us to move faster towards a single economy and improved regional governance. In this venture, political leadership is vital. Our doubts must no longer detain us, and we must ever more love and care for Caricom, for without it, despite its many false starts and disappointments, our people would be diminished in their quest to enhance, in their own interests, their capacity to address optimally the internal and exogenous challenges which beset them. In all these reflections, we must never forget Caricom's accomplishments, which constitute a part of the permanent landscape of our region's political economy. Sometimes when we make many steps forward and have so many advances, and we have so many accomplishments, a lot of our people have amnesia. And we become so accustomed to instant coffee and instant cocoa that if we don't get it now for now, it ain't progress. Well, leadership has to point these things out and explain. And competitive national politics doesn't mean that we have to be going at each other's throats on these matters. On all of these things, we should be working as one. because it's past debate now, that we have to deepen the integration movement. Simple, straightforward. We can have arguments about many details, but on that we ought not to have any argument. Mr. Chairman, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, many important items for the ongoing Caricom agenda are up for consideration at this Conference of Heads of State and Government. They include consideration and approval of the strategic plan for Caricom 2015 to 2019, which the distinguished Secretary General mentioned in his remarks. The report of the Commission on the Economy, the imminent coordination of Caricom's policies on climate change, and the post-2015 development agenda as they affect small island developing states. And the conference is upcoming in Samoa in September, a very important conference for us, for small island developing states. An update on the trade negotiations with Canada, the approval of the draft terms of reference and composition of the Regional Commission on Marijuana, a subject on which we must have a mature conversation. The advancing of the historic quest of reparations for native genocide and slavery. The review of the draft protocol for a special carve-out for the OECS in the context of the revised Treaty of Chaguaramas. The report of the Transport Commission. The consideration of and approval of the terms of reference of the Commission on Human Resource Development, a matter being pushed by the distinguished Prime Minister of St. Kitts and Nevis. The Pan-Caribbean Partnership against HIV and AIDS, and that is an important subject for discussion. We have seen in the public domain a number of Christian organizations are wondering whether we are fighting this disease of HIV and AIDS in the correct manner. Are we abandoning Christian principles in this particular battle, and so on. And of course, there is also on the agenda a miscellany of other areas of functional cooperation. So you'd notice we have quite a handful to be doing over the next 3 days. Quite a lot of work, and Gaston has to be on top of all this material in a very short period of time to help to guide the discussion. Mr. Chairman, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, one vital issue touching and concerning human rights in our region, which must be kept on the front burner of Caricom, concerns the unacceptable denial of citizenship to persons of Haitian descent born in the Dominican Republic. The basic facts that have sparked the justifiable regional and international outrage on this matter are well known and need no elaboration here. In late 2013, the Caricom Bureau took a strong stance in demanding an appropriate corrective from the government of the Dominican Republic. And the Bureau laid out a no business as usual position in Caricom's relations with the Dominican Republic. The Bureau's stance was reaffirmed at the intersessional meeting of the Conference of Heads of Caricom in St. Vincent and the Grenadines in March 2014. Since then, the long-awaited reform law on nationalization was enacted by the competent authorities in the Dominican Republic. This law has been rightly condemned regionally and globally as a not-so-clever smokescreen to conduct unsuspecting that a real reform has taken place. In reality, this so-called reform law covers only a minuscule proportion of those persons of Haitian descent who were arbitrarily denationalized. I urge my colleagues not to wobble on this issue and remain firm. It would be wrong to cave in to this unworthy sleight of hand by the authorities in the Dominican Republic. The persons of Haitian descent born in the Dominican Republic who have had their human rights abrogated or denied deserve Caricom's continued support. And it still cannot be business as usual with the Dominican Republic. I say this: the people of Haitian descent who have been denied citizenship in the Dominican Republic, they look to us to give voice to the denial of their human rights. Don't think that they look simply to Haiti. If it is a migration problem, they would look to Haiti. But this is not a migration issue of Haitians into the Dominican Republic. This is an issue of persons who are born in the Dominican Republic of Haitian descent who have been denied their citizenship. And as I speak to you, there are these persons who are nurses who are going to the hospitals. Some of them drive buses. Some are coming in from the fields, going to their homes. They don't have the sense of authority or power that we have. So we have to talk for them. I hear their concerns because our herd melodies are sweet, but those unheard of these persons is sweeter, and we must give voice and amplification to those unheard melodies. As we convene for this conference of heads, we must admit that there is genuine material hardship among huge sections of the region's population. We have to admit this. We can't hold this meeting as though we don't have a lot of people in the Caribbean suffering. For us to say otherwise would be untruthful. We have this genuine material hardship as a consequence of the global economic meltdown of September 2008 and continuing. The severe impact of several natural disasters, the still unresolved debacle of the collapse of the British American Insurance Company and CLICO, especially in the OECS member states, the capital and liquidity challenges of many indigenous banks, the enormous fiscal overhang and correspondingly unsustainable debt to GDP ratios in most Caricom countries. We have to watch the truth in its face and come to terms with it. Undoubtedly, this economic and fiscal conundrum demands continued urgent corrective action nationally and regionally. The conversation on these matters is at the top of the agenda. At this summit, national solutions are at best partial, and a concerted regional approach is required to improve our economies, create wealth and jobs, and manage much better our fiscal and debt condition, and strengthen the social safety net for those who are disadvantaged. The task ahead is not easy, but we must keep our focus accordingly. We have survived and thrived and gotten over far worse challenges. Our parents and grandparents have done so. Why are we worried about this? We mustn't be fearful. Face the challenges squarely and honestly. Civil society, including businesses and trade unions, must appreciate the continuing difficulties and act responsibly. There is no magic wand. And the population who are out there who think that there is, I'm sorry to tell you, there is none. Hard, smart, and productive work has to be the preferred option over profligacy, leisure, pleasure, and nice time. Leisure, pleasure, and nice time. While it is wonderful, I love it. I love plenty of it. But somebody has to pay for it. And if you don't work for it, you have to get it from somebody else voluntarily, or you take it from them involuntarily. So we have to have smart, hard, productive work. All hands are required to be on deck. Facile solutions are but mirages. We must dig deep into the recesses of our Caribbean civilization to summon all that which is good and sensible in us as we go forward. I take heart in this matter from the wisdom of the book of Ecclesiastes. He that observeth the wind will not sow. He that observeth the wind will not sow. And he that regardeth the clouds will not reap. In the morning, sow the seed. And in the evening, withhold not thy hand. For thou knowest not which shall prosper, whether this or that, or whether they both shall be alike good. As I close, I thank on behalf of the community, the Secretary General, and the Caricom Secretariat for their continued productive labors and devotion to duty in challenging circumstances and difficult times. It gives me great pleasure to pass the baton of chairmanship to my dear brother, Gaston, of Antigua and Barbuda, our dear Prime Minister. Thank you very much.
We thank the Honorable Prime Minister of St. Vincent and the Grenadines and outgoing Chairman of the conference for his usual thought-provoking presentation. Our next performance this evening comes from one of Antigua's top performers. He has dominated the soca landscape in Antigua and Barbuda over the past 6 years. He is regionally and internationally known for his infectious rhythms. Join with me as we welcome Antigua's Tian Winter.
The Governor General of Antigua and Barbuda, distinguished heads of government, special guests, ladies and gentlemen, good evening. I'm here to break the little, the seriousness and the little monotony that's going on here. Because, Carnival is in the air, right? And we're in the month of July. All right? And Carnival is a special part to each country, I'm sure. Isn't it? Yes. Definitely so. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm inviting each one, all the foreigners here, back to our Carnival in Antigua. Is that okay? Special invite. Go ahead, Whitney. Because every carnival we definitely have a good time. Isn't it so, Mr. Joseph? Yes, yes. So let me tell you about it. Watch.
Well, I can see the heat rising, the temperature. We more than ready to take this carnival season. Don't matter if rain, we still won't be here. Nothing can put we down.
If you're ready for Antigua's carnival, just give me a wave like so now.
We come out to take a wine, no matter the condition. We can't get enough of it. No, plenty heat coming between us when we start to walk on. Can't contain the groovy feeling. What to do? Just let the rhythm rock back and let it take. Free up and feel the bass now. Just let the rhythm rock back and let it. Just let the rhythm
take you right here to Antigua's carnival.
We having a good time. When you see we on the road, body to body, we having a good time. That's just you know. Whoa. We on the road to fulfill our mission. Don't care who watching we. Any from any condition, we going to mash up the. Every man up on a woman, jumping up in a session, center of attention. We come out to take a wine, no matter the condition. We can't get enough of it. No, plenty heat coming between us when we start to contain the groovy feeling. I just let the rhythm rock back and let it free up and feel the bass now. I just let the rhythm rock back and let it. Just let the rhythm take ya. We having a good time. When you see we on the road, body to body, we having a good time. In Antigua you can find me. Yes, when I can feel the heat rising, the temperature.
I'm inviting you to Antigua's carnival. Ladies and gentlemen, it's been a pleasure to be performing in front of this illustrious gathering. My name is Steve. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
We thank our reigning soca champion, Tian Winter, for that presentation. In 1984, while addressing the Caricom Council of Ministers in Guyana, former Prime Minister of Antigua and Barbuda and champion of Antigua and Barbuda's thrust into regional integration, the Honorable Lester Bird said, and I quote, "Caricom is being buffeted from within and without. Only a committed crew determined to steer her to a safe anchorage, Placid Bay, will save her from being rent asunder," end of quote. Today, we can safely say that not only does Caricom have a committed crew in the government of Antigua and Barbuda, but an able and dedicated captain in the person of Prime Minister the Honorable Gaston Brown. The energy, determination, and competence that Prime Minister Brown brings to the Caricom grouping is certain to move Caricom forward and transform the institution. Prime Minister Brown's vision for Antigua and Barbuda is to transform our nation into an economic powerhouse within the Caribbean. This is very evident because on the first day on the job as Prime Minister and on a weekend, and after 8 hours of negotiations, he was able to sign an agreement for a $2 billion investment project for Antigua and Barbuda. Prime Minister Brown is no stranger to the principles and objectives of Caricom, being a businessman for the past 25 years and being involved in the management of a number of regional companies, including Liat 1974 Limited. He's a fourth-term parliamentarian, having won his first seat in March of 1999. He has over 13 years' experience in banking and holds a first degree in banking and an MBA in finance from the University of Manchester. It is my pleasure to invite to the podium to address you, the Prime Minister of Antigua and Barbuda and incoming Chairman of the Caribbean Community Caricom, the Honorable Gaston A. Brown.
Thank you very much, Mr. Master of Ceremony, Dame Louise Lake Tact, Governor General of Antigua and Barbuda, colleague heads of government, heads of delegation, honorable ministers, President of the Senate, Speaker of the House of Representatives, President of the Caribbean Court of Justice, other members of the judiciary, members of the diplomatic corps, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good evening. Pardon my voice this evening and perhaps a few intermittent coughs, which are as a consequence of a very grueling campaign which lasted several months. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my great privilege to welcome you all on behalf of the people and government of Antigua and Barbuda to the very place where our modern Caribbean integration movement began 49 years ago. It was at this very Dickinson Bay in 1965 that the leaders of Antigua and Barbuda, Barbados, and Guyana signed the first Carifta Accord that reignited the flame of regional integration from the embers of the West Indies Federation. I was not yet born when that flame was reignited, but it has burnt brightly in my breast from the time of my consciousness. That flame has been kept alight ever since, not only for me, but for all patriotic Caribbean people. Sometimes the flame flickered and dimmed, but it has never been smothered nor extinguished. For the Carifta Accord of 1965 and every advance in regional integration that our One Caribbean has made since then was born of two practical realities that continue to be the cornerstones of our regional society. The first is that each of our countries is too small and too vulnerable to sustain itself in an international environment of intense competition, of tough bargaining, and of preoccupation by the rich and powerful to achieve national advantage, even at the expense of the poor and weak. The prospect for our salvation lies today in that same practical principle that inspired it 49 years ago when three leaders set afloat the idea of integration into the Caribbean Sea that has washed up mightily on all our shores to create our Caribbean Community Caricom. The second reality is best expressed by a lyrical passage of Pierre Labat as far back as 1722, when he asserted that history holds all our countries together in a common destiny. Pierre Labat said, and I quote, "We are all together in the same boat, sailing on the same uncertain sea, and that is no accident that the sea which separates our lands makes no difference to the rhythm of our bodies." Our experience since the first of our nations moved to independence on its own 52 years ago affirms the wisdom of Pierre Labat's insightful analogy to the tempo of our Caribbean bodies. Each of our countries continues to sail on the same uncertain sea, except we are now buffeted by economic, social, financial, and environmental storms that are more intense than we have ever experienced, and that threatened our very survival. I am perfectly aware that I have said here nothing of which my colleague heads of government are not aware, and with which they have not struggled. But as the newest head of government at this time, I want to declare to my colleagues and to the people of Caricom that my government and I are not only fully, but passionately committed to regional integration as an important and vital instrument for our development. I know that there will be skeptics who will say that they have heard it before. They will say that each new head of government starts the course at a gallop, only to stumble at the first obstacle, failing to make the leap upon which the sanctity of our Caribbean identity, our Caribbean civilization, and our Caribbean independence rely. But our people are being pummeled from all sides in unfair terms of trade, in severely reduced official development assistance, in greater demands for costly regulation and enforcement in financial services that are disproportionate to the risk our systems pose, and the insistence on denying us low-cost loans based on the false criteria of per capita income, in pressures to open up our markets in ways that refuse to accept that equal treatment applied to unequals represents injustice. In this context, I affirm my government commitment to the work of the Reparations Commission to achieve reparatory justice for the victims of genocide, slavery, slave trading, and racial apartheid. The Commission is dealing with an ancient wrong that has contemporary implications. Acknowledgement of that wrong and negotiation of its settlement are important to the best relations possible with those countries that were party to the injustice. But as none of our countries can effectively negotiate on its own in the international community for better deals in trade, debt, and access to capital, so too none of our countries can advance the work on reparations on its own. That too is a boat which we are in together. This, therefore, is the time to set aside the illusion of national salvation entirely by national effort. National efforts are crucial in all sectors of our economy and in every aspect of our societies, but such efforts should not discount or disdain regional collaboration. They are two tracks to the same destination. Tracks that we need to synchronize and harmonize to achieve the maximum benefit. It was 25 years ago, almost to the day, that the 10th meeting of the Conference of Heads of Government in Grenada penned Anne's declaration. In that declaration, heads of government said that they were moved by the need to work expeditiously together to deepen the integration process and strengthen the Caribbean community in all of its dimensions to respond to the challenges and opportunities presented by the changes in the global economy. A number of initiatives were identified, the implementation of which were eagerly anticipated. The initiatives did not compromise national sovereignty or diminish in any way the particular characteristics of our people. Their objective was to work toward the establishment in the shortest possible time of a single market and economy. 25 years later, a single market is a work unfinished. A single economy is work not yet begun. Had that work begun, had that work been undertaken, not by constantly looking over our shoulders at those with a vested interest in narrow insularity, but by steadfastly advancing to the goal of regional prosperity, might we not have been better off today as a stronger region with greater capacity to bargain in the global community? In this connection, on behalf of my government, I make it abundantly clear that Antigua and Barbuda will uphold the decision of the Caricom heads of government and the judgment of the Caribbean Court of Justice, the CCJ, in relation to the freedom of movement of Caribbean people. Just as my government will not tolerate discrimination or unlawful treatment of Antiguans and Barbudans anywhere, so we will not encourage discrimination or unlawful treatment of anyone else, and particularly our brothers and sisters of the Caribbean. I wish to emphasize the regional focus of my government by informing you that at the very first meeting of the Cabinet, my government went beyond its treaty obligations and took a decision to abolish, with immediate effect, the requirement for work permit fees for all Caricom nationals during the remainder of 2014. Further, with regard to the Caribbean Court of Justice, the CCJ, as a court of final appeal replacing the Judicial Committee of the British Privy Council, to which we are grateful for their many years of invaluable service, it is my government's intention to hold the referendum required by the Constitution to make this possible as soon as practicable. We can never be truly independent in the region while our final appellate court is the court of our former colonial masters. The decisions of the CCJ thus far can only bolster our confidence in the quality of the jurisprudence that emanates from the court. Therefore, Antigua and Barbuda will not loiter on this matter. We will demonstrate confidence in our own and will take steps in conjunction with other OECS sister states to join the appellate jurisdiction of the Caribbean Court of Justice. Today, I call on the people of the region to rally behind this important aspect of our regional governance and to support the establishment of our judicial independence in the CCJ. Ladies and gentlemen, I am not so dewy-eyed and naive not to appreciate the challenges that governments face in balancing competing interests in all their societies. And I congratulate my colleagues who, notwithstanding the obstacles, have kept the faith in advancing our Caribbean community. In this regard, I pay special tribute to my predecessor as Caricom Chair, the Prime Minister of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Dr. Ralph Gonsalves. Dr. Ralph Gonsalves has been exemplary in speaking about our weaknesses and blemishes while focusing on the way forward. And you heard him this evening, and I'm sure you'd agree that he's easily one of our top Caribbean statesmen. I speak no new wisdom by saying that critical to the success of Caricom as an integration movement are effective governance and free movement, among others. Let us all commit ourselves to the removal of all barriers to free movement and to accelerate the strengthening of the Caricom Secretariat to perfect and advance the single market and economy. Let us recommit ourselves, and certainly our respective countries, to accelerate the integration process. If we are serious about Caricom as an instrument for the development of our countries and of the region, we should focus on a priority action plan that is strategically linked to achieving the core objectives of the single market and economy. Advancing the integration movement cannot be achieved by waiting for the most reluctant among us to act. Ladies and gentlemen, perhaps the time has come for integration by a coalition of the willing. And a coalition of the willing in various sectors of the economy, instead of allowing those who are reluctant to stymie our efforts to advance. Thus, for example, there could be collaboration between willing governments and the private sector in the ownership of productive operations in each other's countries. For example, one or two governments might vest in a project or invest in a project in a country with a natural resource that could be developed into a viable economic project that would create an income stream, not only for the government in which the resource resides, but also the governments that invest in the enterprise. I think here particularly of renewable energy projects that are hydro or geothermal related in, say, Guyana, St. Kitts and Nevis, and Dominica. These projects have high front-end capital costs, but financial studies that have been done indicate significant returns once they are up and running. Similarly, while one government might lack the credit standing to raise money in the capital market, if two or more governments approach the market together with equity stakes in these projects, they have a far better chance of success. The same principle applies to joint tourism promotion, air and sea transportation. And I imagine that we'll leave the issue of layout for our caucus. We must always recall that together we have an abundance of wealth. Together our countries possess gold, diamonds, oil, gas, forestry, abundant agricultural products and fisheries, tourism and financial services. Our region is by no means resource poor. We contribute to our own pauperization by failing to integrate our resources in joint production and joint ventures. Is it not time that we stop clinging to limited possessions with limited returns in the name of national sovereignty when such clinging does not improve our circumstances? Is it not better that we pool our resources to give us all ownership of joint enterprise from which we will all derive a greater benefit? I'll leave you to decide. Current chairman of both Caricom and the OCS, I recognize that we have two sets of integration arrangements operating side by side, which inevitably will result in inconsistencies, overlaps, and possible duplications. Notwithstanding this, I believe that the economic union arrangements being undertaken by the OECS represent a coalition of the willing, and with complete free movement, its single financial and economic space can serve as an impetus to the wider Caricom economic integration process. I therefore urge all the member states, and I emphasize all the member states of Caricom, to allow the widest possible latitude to the OECS countries to pursue their economic union without fear of contravening the provisions of the revised Treaty of Chaguaramas. Ladies and gentlemen, without going into the domestic politics of my country, let me say that we have just come out of a general election that made it clear that the old ways will not suffice. The old ways will not do. That we have a population mostly of young people below the age of 30. And they are young people who are desirous of change. They're desirous of change to widen the scope of opportunity and to broaden the space of their aspirations. In many of our countries, Unemployment is high and highest among our young people, bright, able-bodied men and women. Just as the young people of my country are eager to end the old ways, to tear down the barriers to their growth, and to march forward, so I suspect are the youth of most of our countries. If nothing else, their relentlessness, their restlessness should make us realize that the sensible option for creating such space and widening such scope resides in our interdependence on each other. The alternative is their frustration. That frustration will result in their rebellion or their exodus to shores outside our region, taking their talents that we urgently need. That is why, if we are to go forward, we must move together, offering our people a shared space in all of our countries and the scope to grow while contributing to national and regional development. Therefore, while I am acutely aware that I'll be adding to the mandate of the Caricom Secretariat and that the money for funding will have to be raised, I urge this conference to establish a commission specifically to focus on the issue of youth unemployment in our region with a view to taking urgent action to tackle it. I suggest that if the idea of such a commission meets the approval of this conference, evidence be taken from young people across our region and how they see the issue being addressed. Our greatest task is to put our people to work. It is quintessential, and it is important that we continue to devise strategies and programs to put our people to work. This is not an unsolvable problem if we face it wisely and courageously. It can be accomplished in part by national efforts, but it can be accelerated by regional collaboration, treating the task as we would treat the emergency of a natural disaster. If we succeed in addressing this challenge, we will turn the entire Caricom neighborhood into an economic powerhouse. Production integration, joint ventures, joint risk, joint ownership, and reaping joint benefits on a grand scale that joins up banks, businesses, and governments through regional collaboration is a large purpose that I fervently hope we can accept as a sacred obligation and a unity of duty to our one Caribbean people. I am hopeful that in each of our member states that we can remove Caricom affairs from the scope of political conflict and promote a national consensus that envisions a united Caribbean. What is it that stops us from achieving a united Caribbean? Is it fear? If so, I quote the words of a U.S. President, Franklin D. Roosevelt, as he faced the Great Depression of the 1930s. And I quote, "Let me assert my firm belief that the only thing we have to fear is fear itself. Nameless, unreasoning, unjustified terror which paralyzes needed efforts to convert retreat into advance." End of quote. My fellow heads of government, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, on this hallowed ground of Dickinson Bay, where regional integration was raised from the ruin, we invoke the spirit of Dickinson Bay, the spirit of our founding fathers who knew well that we either integrated or perished. We have paused enough. It is time for action. We have retreated enough. It is time to advance. I pray this evening for a most successful conference and devising strategies and programs to multiply our material fortunes, and to advance the integration movement. Finally, I call in this conference to take our people forward together as a united Caribbean nation of one people with a common destiny. I thank you.
We thank the Honorable Prime Minister of Antigua and Barbuda for setting the stage for discussions over the next 3 days. This evening, ladies and gentlemen, we have another special ceremony to perform. And I will invite our Caricom Ambassador, Youth Ambassador, to assist our Honorable Prime Minister and Chairman of Caricom, Gaston Brown, to present the 11th Caricom Triennial Award for Women to our honoree this evening. Marian Bethel, Bahamian by birth and quintessential Caribbean woman, is a distinguished attorney, scholar, poet, filmmaker, essayist, and short story writer who has gained national, regional, and international recognition and acclaim for her advocacy in the areas of gender equality and human rights. Ms. Bethel's accomplishments have been shaped through a rich career and distinguished academic pursuits and achievements worldwide. Our recipient began as a career academic, a junior abroad to the University of Valencia in 1973, and went on to acquire a Bachelor of Arts degree in Spanish at the McGill University in Montreal in 1975. Immediately after, she completed a Master of Arts degree at the Teachers College, Columbia University, New York, and entered the teaching profession in the Bahamas, eventually serving as a lecturer at the College of the Bahamas. Ms. Bethel's academic and career aspirations were, however, not to be narrowly circumscribed, and in 1984 she was awarded a Bachelor of Arts in Law from Cambridge University and admitted to the Bar of England and Wales the following year. After practicing law with the Attorney General's chambers in the Bahamas, she returned to academic pursuits and in 1990 received a Master of Arts in Law from Cambridge University in the United Kingdom. Ms. Bethel has been a partner in the Sears and Company Law Chambers in Nassau since 1994. She has been a member of the Legal Aid Center, the Bahamas Bar Association, founder and co-editor of the Bahamas Bar Journal, and has served on the International Federation of Lawyers since 2007. As an advocate for human rights, Ms. Bethel was co-founder and chairperson of the Bahamas Committee on South Africa, and from 1996 to 97, she was the convener and chair of the Citizens Committee Against Violence and the Death Penalty in Nassau. She has been a delegate to several conferences, including the Caribbean Regional Judicial Colloquium for Senior Judges on the promotion of human rights for women and the girl child through the judiciary. Throughout her career, Ms. Bethel has made significant contributions to advancing gender equality. She is the founder and convener of Developing Alternatives for Women Now, called DAWN, established in 1986 as a women's association in the Bahamas, committed to articulating and actualizing the needs and aspirations of women. She served as a member of the National Women's Advisory Council from 1991 to 1996, and during this period also served on several international committees, including the Group of Experts from the Organization of American States, Inter-American Commission of Women, responsible for drafting model regulation for member states on the prevention and elimination of violence against women. Ms. Bethel's dedication to the cause of women has also found expression in her work as a community volunteer. She has conducted peer and group counseling for women in crisis, undertaken rape survivor advocacy work, and taught English and reading skills at the women's prison in Nassau. In the field of arts and culture, Marian Bethel has excelled in writing poetry, short stories, and essays. In 2008, she co-founded the Bahamas Writers Summer Institute, which offers creative writing workshops in poetry, playwriting, and screenwriting to emerging and established writers, and also engages writers and the Bahamian community in a dynamic conversation on the literary arts, culture, society, and the role of the writer. Ms. Bethel has also served as guest writer at several notable regional and international meetings for writers and poets, and has had the honor of serving for a year as the Alice Pasoka Poetry Fellow at the Mary Ingram Bunting Institute of Radcliffe College, Harvard University. This outstanding daughter of the Caribbean has more recently ventured into yet another area of endeavor to give further voice to her passion and advocacy for women's rights. Her recent work, a documentary film entitled Womanish Ways, Freedom, Human Rights and Democracy, the Women's Suffrage Movement in the Bahamas, 1948 to 1962, chronicles the journey to the enfranchisement of women in 1962. Since its debut in November 2010 or 2012, the documentary has become a source of inspiration and great pride for Bahamians. It has been shown throughout the Bahamas and at notable institutions in the region and in the United States. It won the award for Best Documentary at the Urban Suburban Film Festival and second place at the Fort Lauderdale Festival. This outstanding Bahamian and Caribbean woman, whom we honor today, and I invite our Caricom Youth Ambassador to escort Ms. Bethel to center stage, and also invite our Honorable Prime Minister and Chairman of Caricom, Gaston Brown, to make the presentation to our honoree today. She has applied her many talents in the fields of law, culture, and education to promote equality, deepen awareness of discrimination, and advocate for a more just society locally, regionally, and internationally. The presence and support of so many family members and friends here today is testimony to the commitment she has shown to those closest to her and the high regard which they in turn have for her. For her outstanding contribution to the field of gender and development and her role as an exemplary Caricom citizen, it is with great pleasure that the Caribbean community now honors Miss Marian Bethel and gives her the 11th Caricom Triennial Award for Women.
Her Excellency, Dame Louise Lake Tack, Governor General of Antigua and Barbuda, Honorable Gaston Brown, Prime Minister of Antigua and Barbuda, and Chairman of the Caribbean Community, other heads of state and government of the Caribbean Community, heads of delegations of member states and associate members of Caricom, Secretary General of the Caribbean Community, other heads of regional and international organizations, members of Parliament of Antigua and Barbuda and other Caricom member countries, members of the Diplomatic Corps, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, members of the media, and last but not least, my beloved family, who is here to share in this wonderful celebration with me. My husband, Alfred Sears, my daughters, Ife and Nia, my siblings, the retired Justice Ruby Nottage, Dr. Pamela Ettock, Dr. Paulette Bethel, Owen Bethel, and my niece, Kenya Nottage. Thank you. A good evening to everyone. I commence with a heartfelt recognition of the plight of the young high school girls of Chibok, Borno State, Nigeria, abducted in April of this year. The two teenaged girls, Indian, raped and hanged in Uttar Pradesh in May, and the 25-year-old pregnant Pakistani woman stoned to death in May for marrying against her family's wishes. The poem of Mahade Das of Guyana, My Finer Steel Will Grow, aptly describes despair and hope as we confront the issue of gender-based violence. I will read this poem in order to keep the memory of these girls and this young woman alive. My finer steel will grow. My heavens are hailing upward tonight. The felled star is like a dagger stuck deep in my heart. Anon, I am gone. There is no place to rest my accidental head. It is a dog's life. Today there are many bones. Yesterday there were too many. The common fleas irritate my hairy nape. My legs are poles the world cannot keep upright. They dare not fall, though. My paws trace out this path of death too often that I smell. My snaky hunger obsesses. My red eye rage apoplectic twists my growling gut. Yet, the day will come when the sun will shine its brazen face upon my heart, gone dark like night and rotted blood. I will drown my fleas, or the river choke me to death. They pound like a carpenter gone berserk, hammering rains the bullets on my back. Whilst the hammering arm in rhythmic falter flags, my finer steel will grow, my heaven. It is with profound gratitude and thankfulness that I accept this 11th Caricom Triennial Award for Women. It is an award that speaks to Caricom's highest aspirations for women in the Caribbean and indeed the world. That for all the violence, cruelty, inequity, and injustice that women face regionally and globally, this is not our destiny. Women's creativity, imagination, and perseverance, as anchored in our social agency, political actions, and work, do matter, for they are the foundation of our reach towards equity, social justice, and peace. I express my profound thanks to the Government of the Bahamas, and in particular, the Honorable Melanie Griffin, the Minister of Social Services of the Bahamas, and Ms. Christine Campbell of the Bureau of Women's Affairs for nominating me, and the Regional Selection Subcommittee and the Council on Human and Social Development of Caricom for selecting me to be the recipient of this award. I am cognizant that this honor is one that is coveted by Caribbean women, particularly in the Academy. I am fully aware that there are many women within and outside the Academy, women who are on the front lines of the pursuit of gender justice, women who hold high office in regional and international organizations, women who work tirelessly in crisis centers to relieve suffering, women who are only known to those whom they help, women who are committed to both the creative arts and political activism, who are entirely and fully deserving of this award. I am, therefore, humbled by this honor. While the award is often given for a lifetime of excellent work, I consider myself somewhere in the middle of this journey, not the end. I am honored to join a most distinguished group of Caribbean women who have preceded me. Over the years, I have interacted with such as Dr. Peggy Antrobus, Dr. Jocelyn Messiah, Dr. Rhoda Reddock, and Dr. Udine Barreto in advancing the cause of women, all of whom have forwarded to me their good wishes. Further, I am pleased to say that this award, not well known in the Bahamas, has now kindled the interest of many young and older Bahamian women. At this point, I would like to express my deepest thanks to the Caribbean Association of Feminist Research and Action, based in Trinidad and Tobago, and Dawn International for their support of our work on behalf of women in the Bahamas, especially during the years 1986 to 1996. On visiting the Caricom website page on the Triennial Award for Women, I was hugely surprised to read the following quote by Robert Love from the Advocate, 1895. It says, "The race rises as its women rise. They are the true standard of its elevation." It was not the significance of the quote that intrigued me, but that the words Robert Love, a Bahamian by birth and socialization, were the caption for this Caricom Triennial Award. I wondered if the wider Caribbean community knew that this great Pan-Africanist, medical doctor, missionary, and priest was in fact a Bahamian. But I'm getting ahead of myself here, because the truth is that we as Bahamians do not yet know and appreciate fully the stature of Robert Love, his significant work not only in the Bahamas, but Jamaica, Haiti, and the Caribbean diaspora. In short, Dr. Love established a significant career as a social reformer, politician, and radical journalist in Jamaica in the 1890s. He founded the Jamaica Advocate, a Pan-Africanist newspaper. Dr. Love later became a primary mentor and friend to Marcus Garvey, helping to foster Garvey's consciousness of Africa and the ideas of Pan-Africanism. That Dr. Love was proposed to be recognized as one of the national heroes of Jamaica speaks of his work there. That Dr. Love remains an unrecognized national hero in the Bahamas, and that his name and work are not part of the vocabulary of our students, speak of our collective inattention to the real business of nation building and regional engagement. But this story of Robert Love and Marcus Garvey comes full circle for me personally. My father was named Marcus in honor of Garvey. My grandfather, Reuben Bethel, was one of the principal founders of the Garvey movement and the Universal Negro Improvement Association in the Bahamas. In November 1927, Garvey arrived in the Bahamas, visited the Universal Negro Improvement Association's office on Lewis Street in Grantstown, and then gave a resounding speech to hundreds of Bahamians on the Southern Recreation Ground in Grantstown. Grantstown was where Robert Love was born, attended St. Agnes Church, spent his formative years, and worked as a teacher. Grantstown was also the bedrock community of several lodges and other benevolent societies. Many Bahamians of Grantstown proudly affirm their direct ancestry to liberated Yoruba Africans. This is the same community in which I attended preparatory and primary school, spent Saturday mornings in the Southern Public Library reading with the librarian, Miss Lillian Coakley, went to the movies at the Capitol Cinema with my siblings, and accompanied by my father or mother, deposited my shillings and pence, mostly pence, in the People's Penny Savings Bank, the first and only Black-owned bank in the Bahamas. And as if these references to Grantstown were not enough to give a sense of community, of a community rich in human and cultural capital, this is the community in which the women's suffrage movement of the Bahamas was conceived and launched in 1948. The suffragist leaders, Mary Ingram, Mabel Walker, Althea Mortimer, Mildred Donaldson, Dame Dr. Doris Johnson, all lived in the Grantstown and the adjacent Baintown community of Nassau. Along with Georgiana Simonet and Eugenia Lockhart, two other leaders of the suffrage movement, all these women were close friends and lodge sisters of my mother, Jane Bethel, and my grandmothers, Frances Butler and Francine Butler, who were also actively involved in the suffrage for women. On my return home from school in 1986, I immediately set about founding a women's feminist group called Dawn. One of its cultural objectives was the reclamation and affirmation of women's history in the Bahamas. At the time, I read an article written by Kim Outen Stubbs, an archivist, on the women's suffrage movement in the Bahamas. I had not encountered such a coherent summary of this political movement before. It completely changed my inner compass settings. Later, I read an essay by Ruth Bo Darville, an historian, who set the women's suffrage movement in the context of the Burma Road riots of 1942 and the majority rule movement in the Bahamas. In these two papers, the suffrage movement was totally transformed from being a quaint anecdote and a footnote in Bahamian history into an unassailable political landmark. I publicly thank Kim Outen Stubbs and Ruth Bo Darville, along with Dr. Gail Saunders, whose research on women's history in the Bahamas is an invaluable resource. I am also indebted to the members of Dawn Bahamas, who in the latter part of 1986 diligently interviewed many women who participated in the suffrage movement. We were absolutely fortunate to have recorded their stories before their passing. These interviews were published throughout 1987 in the Nassau Guardian newspaper in celebration of the 25th anniversary of the suffrage for women. During the 40s, 50s, and 60s, in
and that will be chaired by Antigua and Barbuda's Prime Minister, the Honorable Gaston Brown, who is also the incoming chairman of Caricom.
So that's where we're going to leave you this evening from this, of course, opening ceremony. We're glad that you could be part of it right here on ABS, and do continue to stay with us throughout the evening and tomorrow morning. I am Dave Lester Bain.
And I am Phil George. It was a pleasure having you in our company. And so we say good evening from Sandals Grant.
A pleasant good evening.
Segment of the news is sponsored by ABI Finance.